Okay. So welcome to the learning series. This is where we are going to review the questions of the new exam. So we'll start off with section 2.1 to 2.5. And if my voice holds out, we'll continue on with the next part. So this new exam is effective July 15th, and the new questions are shown in bold. So we completed rules and regulations. So this is the next sort of section on procedures. And then 3 onwards gets into the more technical aspects of amateur radio. So today we'll start off by looking at repeaters, phonetic alphabet, voice, tuning and testing, and CW Morse code. And then we'll continue with the next part. So the first part has to do with repeaters. So what is the appropriate way to make a contact on a repeater? And the answer is C. Say the call sign of the station you want to contact, and then your call sign. And then next question is, what is the main purpose of a repeater? And it's to increase the range of portable and mobile stations. What is frequency coordination on VHF and UHF bands? So don't get this confused with the band plan. It actually goes into more detail. And the answer is C, a process which seeks to carefully recommend frequencies to minimize interference with neighboring repeaters. So if you have like 10 or 15 repeaters, like in the lower mainland, they're all operating on different frequencies and similar offsets. You don't want the input and the output of a repeater to interfere with someone else's repeater.
It's actually close to 40 repeaters in the lower mainland for VHF.
Yeah, and then also because we're close to the U.S., we also have to look at what Washington State is doing, so ensure that we don't have interference there too. So what is the purpose of a repeater timeout timer? So it's D, it interrupts lengthy transmissions. So if you talk for a long time, the repeater will time itself out. What is the CTCS?
Well, you have to explain that the primary purpose of repeaters is for emergency transmissions, not for rag chewing, and that is why there's interrupters and timeouts set for those purposes, but also primarily is to get users in practice to keep transmissions as short as possible. Mm-hmm. So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, either for emergency use or for nets in the morning, where people talking to communicate. Yeah, but in general, you try to keep your transmissions as short as possible. So what is the CTCSS tone? So that tone is B, a subaudible tone that activates a receiver's audio output when present. How do you call another station on a repeater if you know the station's call sign? So this is similar to the previous question we had. So D, say the station's call sign, then identify your own station. Why should you pause before and between transmissions when using the repeater? So to listen for anyone else wanting to use the repeater. Remember, there could be several people using the repeater at the same time, and you want to make sure that you don't interrupt someone else when they're talking. So listen first, and then if it's not busy, then do your call.
Well, it's also for breaks for priority traffic, break-ins for due to priority traffic.
Yeah, I think there might be another. Yeah, this comes up in another question. Why should you keep transmissions short when using a repeater? So the answer here is C. A long transmission may prevent someone with an emergency from using the repeater. What is the proper way to join a conversation on a repeater? And B is to say your call sign during a break between the transmissions. D is not the correct answer to shout break, break. If you're eager to join the conversation, you should wait for a break and then call in. What is the accepted way to ask someone about the location when using a repeater? So just use where are you? A. Correct answer. FM repeater operation on the 2-meter band uses one frequency for transmission and one for reception. What is the standard difference between the transmit and receive frequencies known as the offset? For the 2-meter band, it's 600 kilohertz. Now we get on to the phonetic alphabet. So to make your call sign better understood when using voice transmissions, what should you do? And the answer here is D, use the International Telecommunications Unit phonetic alphabet code words to spell letters in your call sign. What can you use to aid for correct station identification when using your voice? Again, C, the International Telecommunications Phonetic Alphabet. So here are some examples now of the International Telecommunications Phonetic Alphabet. So what would you use for the letter A? So you would use alpha. For the letter B, you would use Bravo. For the letter
Sorry, go back one, Roy. Is alpha spelled like that? Shouldn't
Yes,
it be ALPHA?
no,
That's not.
that's
It's
the
not.
proper spelling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Not alpha. I'm not sure why, but that is how it is. It's
Because
not
you,
how we normally spell it as in the whatever. It
yeah, the
depends.
Greek.
Yeah,
Because
the PH is the Greek version.
yeah, but you know it's not alfalfa sprouts. You know. Anyhow, go on.
okay.
No,
What's
because I think it's more based on European, like Alfa Romeo.
See here,
Yeah.
it's alpha ALPH. Oh no, that's because Roy wrote that. Okay, never mind. It's okay. We know the answer is what matters.
so what's the letter D? So D is Delta. What is the letter E? So E is Echo. And what is the letter G? So G is Golf. What is the letter I? So the letter I is India. And what is the letter L? The letter L is Lima. And then what is the letter P? The P is Papa. And then what is the letter R? And the R is Romeo. And so this is the International Telecommunication Phonetic Alphabet. Sometimes in the US, they may use some slightly different letters, and then some people may make up some letters themselves. But this is the official one for the International Telecommunications Phonetic Alphabet. So although all of them, you should know all of them, these are the ones that are on the exam. So now we get into voice communication. So what's the correct way to call CQ when you're using voice? So you have a number of options here. So the correct way is number D, say CQ 3 times. So CQ, 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 followed by this is, and then your call sign, and give your call sign 3 times. How should you answer a voice CQ call? So you go, the way you should answer it is say the other person's call sign once, and then followed by this is, and then your call sign. What is simplex operation? So simplex is transmitting and receiving on the same frequency, as opposed to being on a repeater where you have two frequencies. When should you consider using simplex operation instead of a repeater? So C, when signals are reliable between communicating parties without using a repeater. So if you don't need to use a repeater, use simplex. Why should local communications use VHF and UHF frequencies instead of HF frequencies? Because to minimize clutter on HF bands, more appropriate for long distance communication. Why should you be careful in choosing a simplex frequency when operating VHF or UHF? So, the thing here is to prevent interference with your local repeater. So to avoid inadvertently choosing a frequency that is the input to a local repeater. If you are talking to a station using a repeater, how would you find out if you could communicate using simplex instead? So what you can do is by checking if you clearly receive the stations on the repeater's input frequency. So what you can do is some radios have a button where you can reverse the input and output on your radio. And if you can hear the other person when you press the reverse button clearly, then you don't need to use the repeater and you can go to the simplex frequency. If you're operating a simplex on a repeater frequency, why would it be good practice to change to another frequency? And again, you don't want to interfere with the users of the repeater. So B is the correct answer. Which sideband is commonly used for the 20-meter operation? So the answer here is upper sideband. USB upper sideband. Typically, anything higher than 30 megahertz is upper sideband, and anything less than 30 megahertz is lower sideband. Although this is by convention, but I mean, you could do upper sideband on those lower frequencies, but by convention, it's lower sideband. Which sideband is commonly used on 3755 for voice operation? So D, it's lower. So that's the 80-meter band, and because it's less than, it's below 30 megahertz, 30 meters, it becomes lower sideband. Here's a new question. When calling a specific station on voice, what is the preferred format for your transmission? So what you do here is you call the call sign of the desired station, followed by your call sign, and then say this is, and your call sign, and then you wait to see if there's a response. So now we get into tuning and testing. What should you do before you transmit on any frequency? And the answer here is D, listen to make sure that others are not using the frequency. And then the next question is, if you contact another station and your signal is extremely strong and perfectly readable, what adjustment should you make on your transmitter? So the answer is A, turn down the power output to the minimum necessary. So ideally, you want to use the minimum power necessary to communicate. Here is a new question. You need to transmit to adjust your antenna tuning. prior to joining an HF single sideband net in progress. On what frequency should you make the adjustment? So you don't want to make the adjustment on the frequency of the net because you could interfere with the net. So what you want to do is go 3 to 5 kilohertz away from the net and do your tuning there and then go back to the frequency of the net. How can on-the-air interference be minimized during lengthy transmission testing? So what you would do here is instead of using an antenna, go use a dummy load and transmit your signal into the dummy load. Why would you use a dummy load? So the answer here is D, to test or adjust your transceiver without causing interference. Here's another question. If you are the net control station of a daily HF net, what should you do if the frequency on which you normally meet is in use just before the net begins? Remember that no one owns the frequency in amateur radio. So what you would do is you would go down, and so D is ask occupants if they would change frequency. Otherwise, if they won't get moved off the frequency, otherwise you move to another clear frequency. If a net is about to begin on a frequency that you and another station are using, what should you do? So again, no one owns it. So as a courtesy, move to a different frequency because the net usually is on that frequency. If propagation changes during your contact and you notice increasing interference from other stations on the same frequency, what should you do? So move to another frequency. When selecting a single sideband voice transmitting frequency, what minimum frequency separation from a contact in progress should you allow to minimize interference? So here, the answer here is 3 kilohertz. So you want to try to move up or down 3 kilohertz away from where you're listening, where you're hearing the signal to minimize interference. Of course, you can go further away, but 3 kilohertz is the minimum. So now, what is a band plan? So a band plan is a voluntary division of an amateur radio band to avoid interference between incompatible modes. So usually they'll have like the digital frequencies and CW on the lower portion of the band plan for that particular band, and then voice and other forms of communication will tend to be on the upper side of that band. Before transmitting, the first thing you should do is listen carefully so as to not interrupt communications always in progress. And if you listen and it's not in progress, the next thing you would do is then ask if the frequency is occupied. And if you don't get a response back, then go ahead. But D is the answer they're looking for is listen carefully so you don't interrupt or cause interference. So now we get into Morse code and CW operations. What is the correct way to call CQ when using Morse code? So the answer down here is send the letter CQ 3 times, followed by the word DE, and then followed by your call sign 3 times. How should you answer a routine Morse code CQ call? So in this case, send the other station's call sign twice, followed by the word DE, and followed by your call sign twice. At what speed should a Morse code CQ be transmitted? At any speed which you can reliably receive. So what is the meaning of CQ? So CQ means calling any station. What is the meaning of the word DE in Morse code? So DE stands for from. What is the meaning of K in Morse code? So K is any signal, please reply. Any station, please reply. What is meant by the term DX? So DX means a distant station. What is the meaning of the term 7-3? So 7-3 means best regards. Which is the following describes full break-in CW or QSK? So that means incoming signals are received between transmitted dots and dashes. So that's the correct answer. When selecting a CW transmitting frequency, what is the minimum frequency separation of a contact in progress in order to allow to minimize interference? So here, because the bandwidth of the signal is smaller, C is the correct answer. So 150 hertz to 500 hertz. Here's a new question. What is the meaning of R in Morse code? So R means all received. So that concludes this section. So we'll just stop the recording and we'll start up the recording again.